on that, an independent director can be invaluable. The independent director, though, has to be someone that adds value to the parts of the business where you do not add value. We've often said when we hire a general manager for a business earning $1 to $2 million a year in EBIT, that general manager will have some good skills. We look for three. We look for good administration, understanding they need to be able to produce a plan, understand the P&L on the balance sheet, and produce a good budget. We look for salesmanship, because they have to be able to get out there and talk the talk to make the company go forward. And we look for technical ability, because if you're selling a $3 million mower to the Auckland International Airport, you actually need to know something about it. Very rarely do we get all three legs on that stool. Usually two is the number. If they've got one, actually they fall over and they disappear. But two legs is usually what we get. Paul and I supply the third leg to that. So as a seller, or even just a business owner, you need to recognise what your skills are and what the gaps are. Get that independent director, get that advisor to come in and fill that third leg on the stool.
So talk a little bit about who's likely to buy your company. So when we say 3 years before you might be able to sell, you actually need to start thinking who that might be. Which doesn't mean you need to corner them over a beer or drive around and tap on the shoulder, but you need to think, if I was them, what would I be looking for? What would be in it for me? There's a surprisingly large number of them. And whilst I would recommend that you engage a broker when you do it, because they will remove that emotion and they will negotiate better than you. This is 3 years before you got to that point. You still need to be thinking, what would they look for? Firstly, there'll be a trade sale. Your competitors, your customers, and your suppliers. People who are in that immediate world that you live in. There is often an advantage for them which is greater than the advantage for a man on the street who walks through the door. Whether it's giving you a local monopoly, whether it's reducing the price that they pay for supplies, there are elements additional to that. We'll come back to the aspects of trust related to that a bit later. There are other value chain participants, people who are still involved in what you do, but at a lesser level. Complementary providers. So at its simplest level, if you make a bed, someone else makes a carpet, they both go into people's bedroom. So people who have a shared interest at some point in what's going on. And you can be quite broad about who they might be. There are what we call peripheral companies. So they are on the very distance of what you're to do with them. That may be due to geography, or it may be due to the entire market that they survey. They may be curious about what you do. They may be looking to move into it. They may be after a foothold. And I would say with that sort of thing, that building up relationships during that 3-year period can often lead to opportunities. There are investment companies like ourselves. There aren't many that have an existing company, industrial, let's make it here approach. Most of them have got a, where's the high tech, how sexy is it, how quickly can I get my money out approach. But there are a couple, like us, that would suit what the majority of you guys do, and it's worth seriously considering. And ring them up and ask them. We're not in the business of wasting time, we will tell someone pretty quickly. And lastly, there's private individuals. Oh, sorry, I missed one. With the investment companies, whilst there are investment companies, there are also a number of wealthy families that have a large amount of funds that are run in trust. They may be worth an approach. But also there's private individuals. And the thing you have to remember is that when you go to market, adverts go up, and that's not the hard bit. The hard bit is screening them. Because whoever's acting as an intermediary has to take the 100 or 200 phone calls they may get, distill that down to the 20 people who are likely to be reasonably good. And then from them, present the best 2 or 3 initially, and then maybe another 2 or 3, that they actually want to negotiate with. So they do a large amount of work in making a decision about who and what's going to stick. And of course, what you don't want to do is do anything that's going to make that shy away. If I go to a company that we've seen, and we look at No One's Touched This website since 2009, I think two things. I think A, someone's lazy, and I think B, there's obviously sales they could have got. So I think I'm going to dig around, I'm going to find out who hasn't done that, because there's a weakness, and I'm also going to think, well, what could they have sold otherwise? So this is why everything you do is going to come back to haunt you a little bit down the track.
So, 3 years, you need to prepare the business. What does that actually mean? Yes, we've all talked about having the right numbers, the reports, preferably the planning. You can even have some external governance. And it doesn't need to be an independent director. It can be an advisor that you meet with once a month or once a quarter to actually run through what the key initiatives are that you want to achieve in your business.
But I'll say, if it is just an advisor, keep written records that are good enough quality for us to look at later. Because if you can see a link between an idea you had and an increase in sales in a certain area, then all of a sudden credibility has gone up.
So these things include the basics of the 80-20 rule. So you walk into a warehouse full of stock and they'll make 80% of the money out of moving 20% of the stock. In every single business, there's a whole lot of dusty stock in the corner. Now when you're buying a company on an earnings multiple, the actual value of the stock is secondary. So if you as a business owner can take that stock, and it's not about making profit, this is about creating cash. Anything that hasn't sold for, I don't know, let's be generous, 18 months, even 2 years, that you've already lost your money, don't worry about it. Sell it for what you can get. Put that cash in your pocket. It's an extraordinary item in your accounts, and when you go to sell your business, your broker will say you need to normalise that and pull it out. So it won't affect the actual value of your business going forward. But for God's sake, get rid of the stuff that doesn't sell. It takes up room in your warehouse. It's a distraction when you've got a buyer coming through, because all of a sudden you need an excuse of why you've got 200 pink toilets in the corner. And no one wanted to buy them. The next step is your image. You've got two images. You have your external image, so all of your electronic media. So if you do Facebook, your website, any other form of electronic image that you project into the marketplace, update it on a regular basis. As Paul says, if it's old, you are thought less of by a potential buyer. And that goes for internal image as well. Your staff, their attitude, your print material that sits in your office, your offices themselves. And I'm not saying you need new carpet and new chairs and what have you, but what you've got needs to look good, and it needs to be in the right place. Down to the painted yellow lines out on the factory floor where you're not allowed to cross. Now we all know the guys will always cross it, and it's hard to keep them in line, but when a buyer comes through, if you have all that in place, it shows that you're working to a system and you are actually proud of what you do and you're good at what you do. We'll touch briefly on the staff, and we'll talk more about the trust implication of telling people that you're for sale later. Governance, I think I would like to repeat that on every single page. Having external advice is essential, because we all suffer from the same problem, that we don't know what we don't know. Even Paul and I do, we walk in somewhere and we simply don't have the level of consumer sophistication for that business to know what questions to ask. And we have to ask other people that have had exposure to that industry what they would look for. You need to do the same in your business. Have an external viewpoint. And if there was an overriding message in that preparation aspect, that you've got to stamp out risk. Look from the buyer's perspective. What is the risks that they're going to take in buying your business, and mitigate them, and show how you've mitigated those risks.
Just adding weight to that governance thing. So our turnover is over $40 million a year, 100 staff. We pay an independent director to make our lives difficult in each one of those companies. for exactly those reasons. That's how important we think it is. Levels of secrecy. We have been intimately involved in the sale of a business for half of what it should have gone for. And we're talking a couple of $1 million difference because the owner was so concerned about secrecy. That's bloody stupid, isn't it? Bloody stupid. That's not the only one, but that's the one within the last 12 months. Now, there are two ways of going about this. Word will get around, however hard you try. Your staff aren't stupid. The kind of questions that we're going to ask, unless you have all of the information we talked about available, when you start to ask it from other people, they will start to wonder why. And if you don't provide them with a compelling, good reason very quickly, they will jump to that conclusion, individually or in the lunchroom. So you can try and brush all that under the carpet, deal with it when it happens or whatever. Or you can accept that this is one of the larger and more challenging tasks you have to face as a business manager, is to prepare those staff so that we think those guys are clearly motivated by the mission, not the man or woman. And there's going to be very little disruption. So that those staff smile when we walk around the factory, rather than going, who's that then? Particularly when you know that 2 or 3 other people may have been through the factory in a week. And of course they all start to go like that. And we often pretend to be insurance brokers. Sorry Matt, not our idea, but it seems to work.
We've been the odd auditor as well.
Yeah. And the reality is people aren't stupid. But what happens is they feel excluded and they feel insecure. They're not likely to go running off for a job with a competitor if you involve them early and you explain what it is going to mean. But they are if they find out through another route 6 weeks before. You need something that they can take, say, when they get home to their families, about what's going to happen. And if they believe in you, as they probably do, that's why they're still working there, and you look them in the eye and you say, I'm not going to sell to any old pilot. It's going to be someone who's got the same vision, which chances are probably will be, otherwise they wouldn't want to buy it. Then they've trusted most of the decisions you've made as their boss. Chances are they'll trust that one. But if you try and hide their stuff, it won't work. Your customers will know as well. It's all small marketplaces. And with your suppliers, again, all they actually want is to keep on selling to the next guys. And so the best way to achieve that is for you to sell to the best buyer, which means your suppliers don't want to put any of the other buyers off during the process. And that's what you've got to remember, is it can go wrong. If people see things they don't like, they will be gone like a shot. And if they get the feeling of something like that, they'll go. And 10 years ago, I had worked with a business where he'd had a failed sale twice in a row. Once probably was their fault, once definitely wasn't, because it was a consortium that fell apart. And that's where I come back to the broker's skill in deciding who is or isn't likely to be a viable buyer. But after twice of it falling apart, everything needed to be put back together again. And it took another 18 months before it came back to the market. This is what Karen was alluding to about getting it right. My gut feel is that if he'd been able to present more than just what he had achieved in the first sale, it would have gone for him. Because it was to a larger company that had higher expectations. And there were also opportunities that you don't know about. So some third parties will say, I wish I'd known you were going to be for sale. That happens quite a bit. Quite a bit. I can say with absolute certainty, if anyone selling injection moulding businesses in this country didn't tell us at LEP about it, afterwards you go, oh, bugger. And they might not have got a better deal. So you can either hide away under it, or you can say, I'm going to do a good job, it's my biggest single challenge. I'm going to work towards that side of it.
I think, just to close off, there's one thing as a potential business seller you take away from what we've said, is no one knows it all. So professional advisors are there for a reason. It's not a fly-by-night industry. They are everywhere and they're here to stay. They are absolutely worth investing in. You do need to build a relationship to find someone that understands you and appreciates what your goals are. But use someone else to negotiate, because you will be emotionally involved. It's human nature, we can't help it. I actually don't know how much they charge because Paul and I never paid them. but they will get a better deal. They will screen out all the tie-ins, and they will give you the ability to have that sounding board that you need so you get the confidence that you're doing the right thing and accepting the right price on the day. Right, and of course we're here all week, so feel free to come and have a chat afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, of course, we'll let you sit down. Yes, absolutely. We'll let you sit down because there are a few questions. Anyone want to kick off with a particular...
Could I possibly?
Go for it.
Thanks, Paul and Myles, excellent. What's the critical acid test for the numbers, apart from auditors and other things, and is there some gut feel there?
Yeah, so the numbers, I mean, we do the basics, obviously, that everyone does. We'll audit your GST. And that's the easiest way to say, is your turnover real? 20 years ago, because there was so much cash around the economy, people could withdraw cash from their bank account and then bank it as sales again. Go, oh, look at my sales, aren't they growing? Now with the electronic payment system, that pretty much disappears. But what we do is we look at the GST number one and audit, does that actually match? Does that turnover exist? And we do the basics of, we'll follow an order through the system. So again, this is why your systems are so important.